Welcome to Always Be Reading. I'm Chantel, and I'm so glad that you are here to join me in tonight's episode of Books with Friends. I'm joined by my cousin, Dr. Michele B Silvera, to discuss Gail Honeyman's debut novel, Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. If you're new to this channel, welcome. This is a space where we read, reflect, and talk about the ways books help us make sense of our lives and of our world. And if you've been with me before, welcome back, friends. You already know that this is where good stories spark great conversations. Published in 2017, this story introduces us to Eleanor, a woman who lives alone, keeps a very strict routine, and insists she's perfectly fine with her quiet, solitary life. But as we learn, fine doesn't always mean okay. And beneath Eleanor's quirky habits and sharp wit is a story about loneliness, survival, and the long, slow process of healing from trauma. And I cannot wait to talk about it all, especially with my cousin Michele, because not only is she a storyteller in her own right, but she is a psychotherapist. And so I'm really excited to get her insight into the world of Eleanor. So this is my spoiler warning right now, guys. This will be like nothing's off the table. We're going to get into all the things. So if you haven't finished reading this book, hit pause, finish reading it, and then come back and join us. Also, we would love for you to participate in the conversation. So if you want to add your own thoughts or pose a question for us, put it in the comment section. Before we jump in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a book chat. And now I'm so excited to have Michele join me as we jump into this book. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and excited.
And thank you for all of your card friends who have given me time with you this night and have shared you with me. Thank you. Thank you to them. I really appreciate it. So when I asked you to read a book with me and you mentioned this book, which is right here for everyone to see, I was really excited because I read this book years ago when it first came out in 2017. I don't even know how I happened upon it. And I enjoyed it, but I remember reading it and I remember wanting and needing to have a conversation about it. And I didn't have a conversation. So when you suggested this book, I was like, yes, yes, yes. So I just want to start with your overall, did you enjoy the book? Did you just kind of to get a temperature of how you felt about it?
Okay. Yes. So overall, I did enjoy the book. Okay. And I enjoyed it because it invited me into a world, Scotland, a world, a young, very isolated woman that I was not seeing as a client, but I was seeing her as a person. And she was inviting me on her journey. And I love new journeys. I was excited about what I was going to find out and what I was going to feel, what I was going to experience that was new. Yeah. And so I took a leap at reading a book that I didn't know anything about. I hadn't heard anything about whether it was a good book or it wasn't a good book. And I enjoyed the ride and the many twists and turns that it took me on.
Yes, yes, well said. It is a book that has a lot of twists and turns. And I, like you, didn't have any expectation with this book. I was fascinated with the title. Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine.
Right.
And because I think it sets you up for that question of well, is she fine? And what is fine? All of these, questions. And one of the things that I liked when you said you were invited on a journey, because that's exactly, I think, what the reader just was able to go on, just this journey of this character and getting to know this character, but on her own terms, in her own way. It was very personal in that way. And I think one of the things that what struck me as I was reading it and reading it for the second time was how being on her journey, basically almost sojourning with her while kind of protecting her space. It's like I'm a witness
Right.
for journey, allowed one to ask and think about like your own life and
Right.
things. And one of the things that's in the title, and it's something that she says repeatedly, is it's fine, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the second reading, it stood out to me more because maybe because it's what's the year? 2015, 2025. So
Hmm.
it's 2017. I'm not going to do math here. I'm English girl. But my kids were younger.
Yeah.
And so I've entered since then in more of the world of fine, right? Like I'm fine, we're
Yeah.
fine. All of these, it's just something that we pass very generously to one another, that we're
Hmm.
fine. And I was really kind of struck by that. There's this quote, if I can find it, that I want to share. Um, I'll have to look. I'm gonna look for it. I'm gonna find it. But it's this quote about how she thinks about this world of fine. And she says, if someone asks you how you are, this is something that her mother is telling her, like her rules, which I know
Right.
we get into. If someone asks you how you are meant to say fine. You are not meant to say that you cried yourself to sleep last night because you hadn't spoken to another person for 2 consecutive days. Fine is what you say.
Right. Exactly. And so many of us are well trained to
Yeah,
say we're fine.
we're
Uh,
fine.
and even if we're not as disturbed as we find out that Eleanor really was, certainly fine does not describe where most of us are when we're being asked that. we,
Right.
it's much more complex than that. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, from the very beginning of the book, you could see just how she wasn't fine, and the rest is discovering why not.
Right.
And yeah, so you're right about that. I'm fine, and being
Yeah.
trained,
And
and
being
then
trained.
to
And
say,
yeah, and also I think what I also thought about too is not only am I trained to say I'm fine, but I'm also trained to receive people telling me they're fine
yes, and move right along.
and move right along. Even when we know, or there are signs that somebody isn't completely fine. And
Exactly.
so I just, and maybe that is because it's easier to, sorry guys, I'm pet sitting my dog here and he is not an obedient child, but maybe it's because we don't know what to do with our own stuff, nuanced emotions.
Hmm.
And we also don't know what to do with other people's emotions as well, that are more complicated in our passing moments, of fine. And so this, it starts off, for those who have read the book, we can immediately kind of guess that no, this woman is not fine. Um, as endearing, I think, and as interesting as Eleanor is. She's a very interesting character that
Hmm.
you're just kind of drawn into, and
Hmm.
you want to get to know, but you do know like something is not, kind of off about her.
Hmm.
Um, and I think one of the main themes that this book brings up that I wanted to talk about is the theme of loneliness.
Hmm.
That's huge.
Hmm.
And reading this, especially in a time where loneliness is an epidemic,
Yeah,
and it's
good
hitting
point.
on so many different demographics of age,
Hmm.
demographics of social circumstances or class circumstances. It's something that is touching everyone. I think that the book had a lot to say about loneliness, even to people, even to readers who are not in Eleanor's shoes with the type of
Hmm.
right that
Exactly.
that she has. And what I appreciated, and I'm interested from your perspective as a clinician, is I thought that the writer, that Gail really captured loneliness in a real and authentic way.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were able to kind of see what it looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure, we were able to see some of the coping mechanisms
Yeah.
that she used, that many of us use,
Yeah.
maybe not to the degree that she did, for various reasons, and particularly trauma, and our struggle to uh, uh, adapt to the trauma, if not heal from the trauma.
Mhm.
And so, before we got into that, I wanted to just shift
Mhm.
to how that our culture even brings that into our faith journeys,
Yeah.
where we are taught to say that we are blessed and highly favored,
Yeah.
which is true, and it's
Right.
and
Right.
in the moment we may not be feeling blessed and highly favored, but there is no invitation to explore that. And so I think that this book draws us in to the conflict between how we are really doing
Hmm.
and how we project that we are doing, and also how other people think that we're doing.
Right.
And it allows a dialogue to take place with all of these entities, without really even talking to Eleanor.
Right.
We're
Right.
just talking to what shows up and hearing what shows up. And so, yeah, I think it was rich in that way. It
Yeah.
allows us to own this for ourselves.
Hmm.
We're not Eleanor, but certainly we have some nuances about us that line right up with saying we're fine or we're blessed and highly favored, without sometimes going beyond that
Yeah.
to sit in it and flush it out some. So yes,
Yeah.
I the painting that we see of loneliness, um, is certainly a vivid one in her case. But I
Yeah.
love how it wasn't all at once. It was, you were watching the painting take place.
Yes, watching the painting take place. I love that. And Michelle, you actually brought up something that I never thought about before with the blessed and highly favored.
Mm-hmm.
Because I actually think, now that I'm thinking about it, and as it hit me, and in this conversation and in comparison to fine, I think that's even worse than fine.
Mm-hmm. Whoops. It could be.
Because it almost feel like, if my response is in almost, and it's so automatic too, like,
Mm-hmm.
just that it's like that automatic training. I'm blessed and highly favored. Well, to communicate anything outside of that could almost be like a betrayal of faith, a
Yeah.
loss of faith. It's bigger than even fine,
Yeah.
which I never thought about.
Yeah. And I brought it up for that reason, because many of us can relate to that uh,
Yeah.
much quicker than coming out of a situation that Eleanor is coming out of. But we are trained to respond a certain way,
Mhm.
and we are affirmed when we respond that way. But if you don't respond that way, then you feel as though, or you can feel as though, you are out of right relationship with
Yes.
something that really matters to you,
Yes. Yes.
or someone
Right.
that really
Right.
matters to you.
Right. And also, probably within the group of people that you're walking with, because I'm sure that
Mhm.
they're saying they're blessed and highly favored too. It's this
Right.
thing we all pass around.
Mhm.
Um, you said something, and I want to understand it more. You said adapt to trauma. What do you
Yeah.
mean by adapting to trauma? You said
Okay. So
adapt
that,
to trauma, or heal from trauma. And what does
right. There are
adapt?
two different things. So before you can heal from it, you have to survive it.
Oh,
And we do that by taking on certain defense mechanisms, one of which is, they mentioned this kind of a dissociation, separating ourselves from the person who was traumatized.
Right.
And although it is still us, all right, we are distanced from the pain that the traumatized part of ourselves experiences by creating an other that does not experience anything. So and so that is a process that takes place when people experience severe trauma, and sometimes they do not come out of that. The healing part is joining those two together again and becoming one person again. Um, and sometimes that does not happen, and people go through their lives with an other showing up and interacting where the traumatized part of you just doesn't show up.
Wow.
Okay. And so that was really what we saw with Eleanor. All right. You didn't know about her trauma.
We didn't know.
You didn't know about it because she had
Yeah.
separated that part of herself out from the part of herself that she allowed to show up in the world.
Yeah.
Until she started her healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And her healing, the catalytic moment for her healing was when the old man Sammy had fell out on the street and had his accident.
Mm-hmm.
And there was her coworker, there was an expectation he had of her responding and like being involved and helping,
Yes.
almost like this push that pushed her outside of her comfort zone, but it also broke her routine because she had a very routinized life.
Right.
And then this accident, along with the accident happening witnessed by the coworker, by Raymond, shook her world up,
Mm-hmm.
and I think she was always posed a different choice. Are you going to go to the hospital and bring his clothes? Aren't you going to go check on him?
Mm-hmm.
All of these kind of things. And it presented a different choice in reality, that was like the reality. But at the same time, and I'm wondering, because I didn't read it like this, the musician that she fell in love with, her infatuation,
Yeah.
she had saw him and had this whole made up thing. Is that an example of disassociated?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is. So the part of her that was traumatized was not interacting with this fantasy. This fantasy was purely from the other.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And the other had this fantasy again. It was all about pleasing mama.
Right.
That this was a gentleman. That's what she, the part of her that was the other determined this was a gentleman and this would be acceptable to mommy.
Right. Oh yes, I see.
And even as everything was about being acceptable to mommy.
Right.
Even her saying she was fine because that's what mommy would want her to say.
Right.
All right. And I do think that she had some jarring moments. Even her meeting Raymond was something accidentally broke. Her computer wasn't working.
Right.
All right.
Right.
And he enters in.
Mm-hmm.
And then an accident or on the street with Sammy,
right.
And so there are all these accidental jolts of her inner self, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jolting her out of her fantasy world and out of her comfort zone into a place where she has to interact, which is not her norm. All right. Even that very thing with Raymond in the very beginning, who becomes her friend, right, over time, right, and her savior in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely see that. And the part that maybe that was interacting with Raymond was her real self or her not disassociated self?
No, she's still disassociated because her real self is still too damaged.
Damaged. Okay.
Okay, to be able to interact with anyone until she really is in therapy. When she's in therapy now, she does the work.
Yes, she does.
Of joining herself with the other and being able to be one person that is in a healing journey. All right, but yeah, the defense mechanism of disassociation is common. And she had many defense mechanisms, including her rituals.
Yes, her rituals.
Her rituals were defense against having to think or feel anything. It was just automatic.
Yeah.
It was automatic to, to go to the one store to get her 2 bottles of vodka and, and her pizza or whatever her ritual meal was going to be.
Yeah.
It was automatic. She didn't have to think about anything.
Yeah.
It's routine, which as long as she didn't have to think, she didn't have to feel.
Right. And so on the one hand, it's like the routines kept her safe.
Right.
And they also kept her stuck.
Yes.
At the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I see that. And it's so, I really marvel at the way that that Honeyman wrote the story, because it was like this slow peeling back where we were able to experience this world and experience her in a kind of a slow move way. It didn't just hit everything at once, know, and I think that helped to. I have such affection for Eleanor.
Yeah.
And I have such fondness for her. And I also, even though I think I feel like the way that she wrote her was in such an honoring way. How she wrote her story, in the sense that she was a victim, trauma, but she wasn't written like a victim. And I just, where I'm so aloof and above her, where I can't learn anything, where the reader can't learn anything, know. And one of the things that I appreciated about Eleanor was, even though she had a very controlled environment that she created for herself out of defensive and necessity, her coping mechanism, what she also kind of was able to have, especially as her world got jolted, was curiosity of observation. She would observe and think about things and notice things and be curious about things. Like when she went over to Raymond's mother's house and met his mom for the first time.
Right.
And she said, I was warm and full and comfortable in a way I couldn't remember feeling before.
Yeah. Again. Yeah.
And so these jolt experiences, they're not just happening to her, they're happening to her and they're impacting her, and she's catching them. She's like catching and noticing it.
Right.
And it's kind of like,
yeah. Like, what was that? Yeah.
Yeah. What was that? What was that? Oh, that felt good. Like, why did that feel good? Is this normal? This hugging thing that people want to do. Like, is this normal? Yeah. And these questions that she begins and trying different things, I think it's really interesting. And what was so, I think, fascinating to me was a lot of the first or different steps that she took was in the beginning, her preparing herself for when she was going to be with a musician.
Right.
He might want to take me out to so-and-so. So this is great practice. I'll go out with Raymond, because then I'll know what to expect.
Exactly.
I was like, Dad, was I like that with Shaka Zulu growing up?
Maybe. Oh.
For those of you all who don't know, I had a serious crush on actually the actor who played Shaka Zulu, the adult man. His name is Henry Seeley. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes. Yes.
Did your
Yes.
research, huh?
Oh, I did. When I was Zulu Baba. Yes, I did.
Oh.
Yes. So I think like that was something that she because these things were like first and new and she
Right.
was touching it, it just was such an instruction of how important it is to catch the moments that are happening to us as we're going through our life.
Mm-hmm.
And because it helps move her from a place of certainty and false security
Right.
to a place of curiosity and wonder and possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's always a struggle because certainty is easy. We know it. We know the good of it, the bad of it. We just want to, and I
Right.
think like it's always we always have to wrestle from being in our certain places about how we certainly feel about ourselves, our situation, our relationships, to curiosity and
Mm-hmm.
and possibility. And we saw her doing that,
Right.
a lot.
I think also it invites us to take a look at how there is a part of us that wants to heal. That I mean, that we are woven together in such a miraculous way that it is the desire of our inner self to
Mhm.
heal from whatever ails us. And so, even if you can't do it initially, and there is a way of creating a coping mechanism until you get there.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that she had this coping mechanism, her world as she designed it, until she could get to the place of her healing beginning. But
Mhm.
you're right, there were moments when you could see that she would feel again, and
Yeah.
feeling was a part of this, right?
Feeling is
A
part of
big
it.
part of, yes, because she
Yeah.
was devoid of feeling in
Yeah.
order not to be killed by it. You know what I mean? She
Yeah.
had to survive what she had been through, and her trauma wasn't just one trauma. I mean, she had a
Woo.
multitude of traumas from, the fire, uh,
Yep.
or and in the foster homes,
Yeah.
abusive relationship where her arm was broken, and you
Yeah.
she just had a
Death
history.
of her sister because of the
Yeah,
fire.
exactly. And
Mhm.
then, but here you have the glimpses of that desire to heal by her having a plant, right?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
was to remind her of her ability to care. It was the
There.
plant's name was
Polly.
Polly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was Polly, but represented her sister Marianne. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and she was able for a long time to find some satisfaction, if not joy, in her
Mm-hmm.
ability to keep this plant alive,
Live.
right? And that was her desire, was to be able to connect with something that she loved and that loved her back again,
Again.
to be able to get back there, even though that journey was so convoluted.
Yeah. That's I really appreciate that connection and the when you talk about like feeling and it leads me to want to talk about one of my favorite characters in the book, which is Raymond. I just love Raymond. And Raymond to me just is the lesson of what
Mhm.
human kindness can
Yeah,
do.
right.
He's a kind person.
And
Just
then
yes, yes,
himself.
yes. And himself. Yes. And I think that when there's this place in the book, I'm gonna read it, where
Mhm.
she feels completely seen by him.
Right.
And the power of someone seeing you
Mhm.
and what they're seeing not be a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she says on page 93, I stood up and began gathering the, oh no, let me go down. She says, okay, so they're finishing up dinner at his mom's house. And so she says, Raymond washed and I dried the dishes. This was his suggestion. Somehow he noticed my red, sore hands, although he didn't make a hullabaloo about it. He merely nudged me away from the sink and thrust a tea towel, a rather jaunty one with a Scotty dog sporting a tartan bow tie,
Mm-hmm.
into my damaged fingers. And I just loved it. He didn't ask questions. He didn't probe. He was so observant,
Right.
her, and just his care for her was so available.
Yeah, exactly. Even when he got her the cat.
Even when he got her the cat.
The
Yes.
cat, was like a breathing, living thing.
Yes.
Different from the plant, right? Yes. Like a step up from the plant. And even though she named it after her favorite vodka, she called it Glen.
Well, we had a dog, J.E. for Jack Daniels, so.
But the gift was also a symbol of healing, because this cat was a rescue cat who had been put on fire.
I didn't know that.
Yes, the cat lived. He lived.
Oh, wow.
He had been set afire and he survived it.
I missed that. That's great.
Yeah, so there were messages.
It was set on fire, y'all, but it was great. Yes. Wow. Yeah. I love that.
I love that, those kinds of connections that she made. Even the connection, I know we kind of all over the place, but of her her phone calls to mommy.
Oh.
I mean, she called her mommy, and a mummy is a is a person who's dead. Who has been mummified after death so that they did not deteriorate.
Right, preserved.
They were preserved after death, and she called her mummy. Having preserved her mother even after her mother had died.
Yes.
And I thought, wow, look at this.
It was that whole part when I got to the part and I was like, wait, what? She's not alive? I had to go back and because I was like, maybe I read it wrong. Maybe it was so well done.
It really was.
And so convincing. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And she carried it and so believable. And she was living for her mother, to please her mother, and and she hated it. Like at the same time, I dread these conversations. I don't want to have like this. I don't want to do it, but yet she couldn't help but do it. And I'm like, did she physically, was she on the phone? Did she really call? This was all in her head?
Except for the one time when she talked to mommy and it wasn't on the phone. So it was like, uh-oh.
I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That really was. And what really kind of, I actually want to take the conversations with her mom and isolate that language. And because it is a master class of what not to say to your children, right? Or anybody. It's such, I don't know what to call it, like emotional manipulation. Like within the same sentence, sometimes there would be a praise or a hope and then a slap and a condemnation.
Right.
Yeah. Like so tightly there together.
Right. Exactly.
And it was constant. Like that's how she took a question or hope or a nice offer, and then she just and then a destructive like word, just crushing.
Right. And that's also very real with children who have been abused by their parents, still seek the approval and love of the parent who was abusive.
Yeah.
That's real.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I could not. And even when she would change the voices, and she would, because she was in prison, and she would go from mommy to like, get out the way, you da 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 da, changing up these roles,
Mm-hmm.
which was also like, oh, your mother was just, she was a chameleon of things. She was nothing that was the solid, like, this is my mom. You
Right.
you were, yeah, I can't imagine
Right.
um the fact that Eleanor was functioning the way that she was, to me, was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Um at the beginning of the book, from after, because this is a story that you get to the end, and then when you do a look back,
Right. Right.
you have a whole different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I want to shift and talk about the social system, the social care system,
Mm-hmm.
the social worker,
Mm-hmm.
and the foster home, because you mentioned something and I'm like, okay, maybe I wasn't crazy, because Eleanor went through several different foster homes,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes when she talked about her foster homes experiences, it was very positive. She would
Mm-hmm.
say positive things about it.
Mm-hmm.
Then in recountings of certain things, you would get bits and pieces of, she broke her arm, or this happened. And it was I felt very confused about how to, because it wasn't demonstrative, like this happened in this
Right.
situation. It was like this kind of happened, but then she would say, oh well, I had good foster care experiences, like it wasn't bad. And so it was disjointed in a way.
Yeah. But it was consistent with how she had to make her life fine. All
Okay.
right.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't fine, then what was it?
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. And if it was other than fine, then she would have to own all of that, not just what mommy did, but all the things that have happened to her in her life. It would just be too overwhelming.
Yeah.
So to say that she was fine on a daily basis and everything that happened to her life was fine, even how she minimized the man she was hooked up with, that broke her arm and several, put her
Yeah.
in the hospital, but she kept going back to him. And you know even that was fine. She didn't say it in a way that made you think, oh, that was such a horrible
Right.
situation. Yeah,
Right.
you know,
Right.
I don't know how I, could have stayed in that situation. It wasn't that. She told it like she was telling you the weather.
Yes, that's what it was. She was telling me like she was telling the weather, and that was kind of
It
disorienting.
rained that
Because
day.
as I was reading it, I'm like, this is not fine.
It
But
doesn't
she's
compute.
saying it is fine. And I was having a problem,
Yeah,
kind of making sense of that, I think.
right. But
Yes.
the dissociation piece was always at work. She was not fully connected with herself. There
Okay.
was,
This is fascinating because it's challenging how okay, so with the office workers,
mm-hmm,
to go in the beginning, she noticed like they're not talking about me, or they're talking about me, and she's like wasn't phased by it. And when I was reading, I was like, that's great, girl. She knows, she doesn't care what they think. She's
mm-hmm,
phased by it. But
right,
perhaps you're saying that's the disassociate behavior.
Right. And it was also taught behavior because her mother always taught her that those people that would act in that way were stupid. They had no training, they weren't well bred. And so the thing to do with that is to ignore them
Ignore
as
it.
if they don't exist.
Right. She was very highfalutin, her mother. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So,
Okay. Okay. And then the social worker, that really was bothersome to me when the social worker came to the house.
mm-hmm.
And I feel it was so invasive. That's how I felt. It
Mm-hmm.
was just, and it was the lack of care. Like, I'm like, what's
Yep.
your point? There was the lack of compassion.
Yep.
It was sterile. That's so clinical.
Yep.
And how real is that portrayal of
Well, she certainly represents some, but not all. Thank goodness.
yeah.
People that work in that field doing what she does get burned out.
Mm,
They have issues of their own, and so there's not always a healthy person that you get to interact with in that journey. If you pass through foster homes, foster care, social workers, a lot of them are burnt out themselves.
right.
All right, by the time, so they do the basic work of providing what is needed in the moment. All right, but
Hmm.
what she really needed was a connection with a compassionate and loving person. All right,
Right.
who really did care. And
Right.
so she does not, she finds that in Raymond, she finds that in Sammy,
Hmm.
she finds that in her therapist,
Hmm.
you
Yes.
know, and
Yes.
so she's able, to achieve the healing that she needs. But it even wasn't complete at the end of the book. You see that
Right.
she elected to continue the work that she was doing because she was making progress, but she wasn't there yet. And which I think was a wonderful message to the reader, and to her audience, that
Hmm.
when you're damaged, you need to get the proper care, but it's not 3 clicks of a heel and you're there.
That's right. That's right. I really like that too, Michelle, because I think so often, especially in story, be it,
Hmm.
story in a book or, a TV
Hmm.
show, movie, we want as the audience that wrapped up happy bow,
Right, right.
you
We wanted her to
know,
walk
fixed.
off into the sunset with Raymond,
Yes,
and
you are fixed. And that helps us to know, bam, we can be fixed too quick, right? And we want that type of hope. And
yeah.
yet this wasn't a story where it was quick.
Hmm.
And it's not a story where there is that wrapped up. She is healed,
Hmm.
with the period at the end of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I feel like I do agree with you that that is was such a great choice,
Hmm.
because I think was a hopeful choice, and it
Hmm.
allows the reader to be okay with not being completely healed, but being on a journey of
Right.
healing.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, I think in this book, it talked about, like, what are some elements or things that are necessary in order for you to be on a healing journey. And
Hmm.
definitely connection was one of them.
Hmm.
And also, I love the fact that we had examples of help
Hmm.
that wasn't good help, that it should have always been in the way of the foster care system and social services. But we also had good help, professional help
Right.
in of the therapists.
Right. Exactly.
and an inside view of what that could look like
Right.
we were able to be in the room, which I
Exactly.
was really
Yeah.
fascinated with.
Exactly. And also how she got there was what we sometimes call hitting rock bottom, when
Yeah.
that she got to the point of no longer wanting to live. So therefore
Yes.
she had to leave the place of I'm fine,
Yeah.
all right, and leave that lie, all
Yeah.
right, and sit with I'm really not
But
fine,
not
and
fine.
so not fine that I
Yeah.
don't think I want to live. That's how not fine I am, all right.
Yeah.
And so for her to get to that deep place, and boy, did
Oh
they
my.
described how things fell apart. Everything was falling apart, and she was in such a messy place, all
Yeah.
right, and it still wasn't over. I mean, that was her breaking point, but she didn't just break in terms of not wanting to live. She broke away from the fantasy.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
And so that is a part of healing, especially when there's dissociation. Um, because if there's dissociation, you have an other, which means the other has a life, which is not a real life.
Which is
It's a
not a real
created
life.
one.
Yeah.
Yes. And so she lets go of the created one and lives
And lives. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
connect with her painful self and
Yeah.
work through the pain. I mean, it was very powerful.
It is powerful. And what you just described reminds me of a quote that the author said. She said she learned to survive, but not how to live.
Yeah, there you go. There you
And
go.
and it just is interesting to me when I think about what this book offers and the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, how with the people that are in our lives,
Right.
are we aware if they're surviving or living? Are we checked in?
Yeah.
Are we observant?
Yeah.
Like Raymond, are we willing to be? He was awkward and kind of like a puppy dog. He just wasn't mindful, like he didn't follow these norms too,
Mm-hmm.
like
Right.
child norms, and it almost took that type of person to help jolt her,
Mm-hmm.
because the other people had their distance,
Mm-hmm.
from her, and that's how they engaged with her.
Mm-hmm.
um well, Cherie has a question. She's joined us in the chat, and
All
she says, she asked, where do we think she'll be a year later in her life? But before that, Cherie asked another question that I want to get to, because I think that's a good like wrap up question. And it was, thanks. In what ways does Eleanor's journey challenge stereotypes about loneliness or mental health?
Mm. Yeah. So, gosh, in a number of ways. Um, let's go back to her mother. I mean, we look at her mother as a villain, but could it be that her mother was mentally ill? Is
Mm,
that how her mental illness showed up? There she could have had a personality disorder, or she could have been schizophrenic, or she could have been, and
right.
and so we see that version. Um, uh, I don't know that there's any stereotypical picture of what mental health or mental unwellness looks like. I think it has many faces, is what I'm saying. So
Right.
that this was her mother was one face, she was another
Other
face
face. Yeah.
of what it could look like.
Yeah.
But there are many faces, and sometimes you can't tell
Right.
because
Challenge of it, right?
it's so
That's the challenge.
underground. Yeah, you have to scratch below the surface in
Mm,
order to see it
mhm.
come out. I'm not sure if I answered Cherie's question.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that that's a good answer, because yeah, I think that that's the challenge of it. And maybe what we look at as, this person is functioning. She has a job, she takes care of herself, is independent, you
Hmm.
know, and yes, it's socially awkward, because I think that people would say she's socially awkward. but I don't know if I think like the aspect or maybe that connection between the relationship between loneliness and
Mm-hmm.
mental health.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until her world opened up and there were more physical humans. Like when she talks about the number of hours that it was when she heard another human voice, like when someone called her on the phone,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, or when I think it was like a electrical man or some maintenance person that
Right.
came to her house, and she was like, oh, it's been so many, like such
Mm.
this wath amount of time before a human being was in her space.
Yeah. Which does create a form of mental illness, and this might be what Cherie was getting at, is if you there are studies where persons are isolated, not even for years like her, but for weeks at a time, and they begin to have a dissociative experience, that they begin to fantasize that there are things and people that aren't there, right?
Right.
Filling space. Yeah, so that, and over time, I mean, they've done studies with animals on whether you have intimate relationships in
Yeah.
your life. And if you don't, all right, then you have a failure to thrive.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that babies fail to thrive even though they have parents, but if their parents are not connecting with them in a loving and intimate way, the child will not thrive.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And so she was not able to thrive in a healthy way, but she also created an other.
Condition. Right. Yeah. That that did her mom serve even this serve a like this, her mother, mommy, did she serve a function for her? Like, was, even though it was not real and unhealthy and abusive, because that language of her mother, did it serve any type of positive usefulness?
Not that I could see, other than I don't want to be like mommy.
Yeah,
you know no,
yeah,
certainly in the book it did not
mhm.
allow us to see any positive things, except her mother taught her about decorum.
Yes,
You
yes,
know what I mean?
yeah,
For whatever that was worth.
right,
Uh,
right,
and yeah, Cherie just put up on the screen talking about the isolation, thinking about the things we did during COVID in order
yeah,
to avoid what could have happened if we were totally isolated from each other with no connection with anyone.
right,
There were many people who got depressed, even suicidal during that time,
yeah,
because they had no connection.
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's an important study, I think, even
Mm,
though it's in a fiction book. It's an important study of the damage of isolation, but she also had trauma in addition to
yeah,
that,
yes.
right? She had trauma from the time she was 10 years old, and probably
Probably before
before.
that. Yeah,
All right,
probably before that.
right.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. This is such I'm so grateful that we were able to talk about this and to talk about it with someone with your breadth of expertise and depth is just, even in my understanding, I'm like, oh, I saw that wrong, or I didn't make that
Mhm.
connection.
Mhm.
And I really do encourage folks to, if you have not read this, read it. Even though it's a really heavy topic and there is trauma, one of the things that I appreciated in the writing was there's also humor. It's
Yeah.
also, it's not a downtrodden
No, it isn't.
data brace. It's not that kind of a book. There is lightness and laughter,
Right.
which I think is also important because laughter is a part of healing, you
Yeah.
know? as well. And so I loved how the author had a great balance between the two. And she's a character that you can both is quirky and odd, and you can chuckle at her. And at the same time, you can kind of be a fierce advocate for her and a cheerleader, you know, and all of those things. Lastly, one of the things I wanted to say that I really appreciated and about this, and I wondered if you caught it. I also, in addition to the book ending and it not being all nicely wrapped up and she's like healed completely, is, oh my gosh, and I've just made a connection to the title. No, it's completely is in the title. It's completely is in the title. Completely is such a definite thing.
Right.
Completely fine.
I'm not just fine. I'm completely
fine, cousin. I'm completely fine. No. And you know what? No one is completely fine.
There we go. And and the book allows us to say, you know, I am not completely fine. I'm good.
I'm good. I'm not completely fine.
Not
We got to come up
fine,
with
and that's all right with me.
Right. Right. So so how the book doesn't wrap up in this pretty little bow with that. I also like the fact that romantic love did not save her.
Right. Good point. There was a question of it, but it was more friendship.
But it was friendship.
It was friendship. Yeah.
It was friendship. It wasn't the romantic love that was in her mind, you know, especially with her mother, but also with society of like, this relationship is going to fix you, save you, make you whole,
make you enough.
Make you enough. And I love that she is like with herself and with a friend that wasn't demanding that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I really, really did love that part, that aspect of
Good point.
It was such a great point. I cannot believe that our time is, I mean, it's too short. It's too short. But I'm so, so, so gratefully appreciative that you spent time this evening and with me and with us. And so thank you so much for joining. Before we wrap up, I just had one last thought, is that I think books like this remind us that healing doesn't happen all at once for any of us. And because of that, I think it encourages us to be patient and gentle with ourselves, but also to be patient and gentle with other people in our lives, you know? And I encourage everyone to not just read this book, but give this book to a friend, or do it like we did, invite a friend into a conversation about this book, because this is really a great book to have a dialogue about. I really think it would be interesting to dialogue with the opposite sex too, you know, with this book. I think that would add like a really interesting dimension, because there's so much to talk about in the conversation, including kindness and in choosing, because she actually did make the choice, as we make the choice, connection over isolation. And I think it's really important in the age that we are living in, where it's an easier choice to choose which isolates us.
That's right.
Almost, dare I say, a fantastical world sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Over human interaction and connection. And that's so important. So if you would like to read Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine for yourself, if you haven't already, you can grab a copy through my bookstore link, which will be in the description box below. Bookshop is a wonderful, wonderful place to buy books online. I love Bookshop, and I really have transitioned to getting my books from them, because every single purchase, every single book, I bought 3 books of the same the other day, and each one of them supports independent bookstores, those cozy community rooted spaces that keep the love of reading alive. And if you all know me, you know that I'm a big fan of independent bookstores. So when you order through Bookshop, you're not just buying a story, you're helping the stories thrive wherever they are. And if today's conversation spoke to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss the next Book with Friends episode. And most importantly, join the conversation. There's stuff in the chat, but the conversation will be going on for days and days. So I do read comments and respond. So please put your thoughts in the comment section below. And before we close, I'm really excited to talk about the next and final book chat that I'm going to be having for this year. And that is with my friend Sean Campbell, who is going to be coming back to talk about Beloved by Toni Morrison. And if you haven't read it yet, do it. If you have read it, you know why I said to read it. You also will know that I started this book. Michelle, you may not know this. This might shock you. I had never read a complete Toni Morrison book, although I have all her books.
Okay.
I started reading Paradise years ago. I think I get in the first chapter and put it down.
Yeah.
So Sean, my friend, invited me to read jazz with him, and I was like, daggone it, he picked Toni Morrison, but I got to do it. And loved it. Okay. Yeah. And now I am reading Beloved and for preparation for our conversation next Monday. I know you've read Beloved, right?
I've read it twice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we're going to be talking about this book next week and exploring how Morrison weaves history and spirits into a single heartbeat, and what her storytelling still teaches us about healing, identity, and the generational echoes of trauma and of love. So it's the last Books with Friends of the year, and I can't think of a more powerful way to close this season. So read Beloved, bring your thoughts, and join us for a conversation about that next week. And that's it, you guys. Thank you again, Michelle, for spending time with me in this space. And thank you again for bringing Eleanor Oliphant back into my life. And just goes to show that you keep your books. If you're like me, I keep my books if you read them more than once.
Yes.
You learn something new. All right, you guys. Until next time, you know what to do. Stay reading. Bye.
Bye.